Kaido is a level 1 adventurer who spends his days getting bullied by weak slimes. However, everything changes when he unlocks an S-rank goddess Mami who grants him unlimited power, making him the strongest adventurer alive. It all starts on the first floor of the dungeon, where Kaido, as usual, is busy battling slimes because he's too weak to advance to the next floor. After finally defeating his 1000th slime, he spots a rare golden slime, and immediately attacks it using his bug spray from Temu. He eventually takes it down, but when he approaches to pick up its core, he is shocked to find a strange card with the picture of a model with jumbo jugs. When he checks the card's stats, he discovers it's a servant card capable of summoning a mythical goddess named Sophie. Thrilled by the discovery, Kaido rushes to the receptionist to ask about its value, and when she reveals that it would be worth $1 billion if sold, Kaido nearly has a heart attack on the spot. That night at home, Kaido debates whether he should summon the goddess to get stronger or just sell the card and become a baller, but since he can't decide which to pick, he decides to sleep on it. The next day, on his way to school, Kaido runs into Haruka, his childhood crush, and as they walk together, he reflects on how for years he hasn't been able to bag her because he is a useless betamale, so he decides to get stronger. A few hours later, as he enters the dungeon, Kaido decides to use the card to level up, determined to become the greatest adventurer. So as he summons the mythical goddess, he is overwhelmed by a glowing magical circle, and in the next instant, an ephemeral, busty Mami appears, then vanishes. Confused, Kaido looks around, wondering what the heck just happened, but when he looks down, he sees Sophie standing beside him. Seeing that she looks like a weak brat, Kaido is immediately consumed by regret that he didn't just cash out, but after pulling himself together, he resigns to continue slime hunting with his mini side chick. However, when Sophie claims she can sense the exact location of every slime in the area, Kaido agrees to follow her, and upon getting there, they spot a single slime casually lying around. Kaido sees this as the perfect opportunity to test Sophie's powers, so he instructs her to defeat the slime and is left utterly speechless when she summons a terrifying divine lightning that fries the slime and also shakes the very foundation of the dungeon. Soon after, Sophie starts complaining of hunger and then gestures at the slime core on the floor, making it clear she wants to eat it. As Kaido feeds her the slime core, he finally understands that every time Sophie uses her power, she gets hungry and needs to be fed a slime core, which means he'll go broke if he keeps feeding her cores. So he decides to rely on his bug spray, and as Sophie guides him to the various locations where the slimes are hiding, Kaido wipes them out using his spray. By the end of the day, he finally levels up and even earns the title Slime Slayer, which boosts all his stats by 50%. With that achievement, Kaido decides to call it a day, but when this makes Sophie sad, he promises that he will summon her again. Then he seals her back into the card. A few hours later, after trading in the cores, Kaido returns home, and as he lies in bed, he thinks about Sophie and just how powerful the midget is. That's when it hits him that with someone as strong as her by his side, he can finally venture into the second floor he has been dreading his entire life. So early the next morning, Kaido heads back to the dungeon with Sophie, ready to face his biggest fear: the goblins on the second floor. Upon arriving at the second floor, Sophie notices Kaido shaking, and when she asks what the problem is, Kaido, panicking, claims he is fine. But Sophie can tell the frightened sissy is quaking in fear, so she grabs his hands and tries to calm him down. Eventually, it works, and Kaido thanks her. But suddenly, Sophie senses a goblin close by and alerts him to the direction of the enemy. However, instead of attacking, Kaido chickens out and starts running out of the second floor, but then he stops when he remembers his dream to become a hero and decides to man up. After Sophie then guides him to where the goblin is, she tries to attack, but Kaido steps in front of her, refusing to let a girl fight his battles. Determined to prove himself, Kaido lunges at the goblin, but as he attacks with his wooden sword, he flops hard and almost gets bodied by the monster. During the exchange, the goblin sends his sword flying, causing Kaido to trip and crash to the ground. But as the monster charges mid-air to finish the job, Kaido pulls out his bug spray and temporarily blinds the goblin with the poisonous mist. Seizing the opportunity, Kaido picks up his sword and attacks again, hoping to land a strike, but the weak dingus trips over a rock, and as he stumbles he manages to stab the goblin. The goblin core drops, and as Kaido picks it up, a golden glow emanates from him, making him realize he has leveled up. When he checks his stats, he discovers he has gained a new skill called Temporary Goblin Slayer, which is granted exclusively to those who defeat a goblin solo and increases all their stats by 10% when fighting goblins. Excited and more confident, Kaido decides to venture deeper into the second floor, and with Sophie's help, he defeats his second goblin in no time. A few minutes later, Kaido takes out more goblins, which sends his adrenaline spiking, and moving deeper into the second floor, he faces an even tougher goblin. But this time, Sophie summons her powerful lightning, turning the goblin into Scooby snacks. But as usual, the pocket-sized goddess gets hungry after every attack, so Kaito is forced to feed her the goblin core. Later that day in class, Kaito discloses to his two worthless friends, Shinji and Hayato, his new adventures on the second floor, and how he no longer grinds slimes but goblins. The two bozos are genuinely impressed by his bravery, but Kaito shocks them further when he reveals he now plans on trying even deeper levels. Over the following weeks, Kaito spends all his time grinding on the second floor, and with Sophie's help, he defeats more goblins than ever. After making enough money, Kaito upgrades his weaponry by purchasing a tungsten rod, and with this sturdy weapon, he deals more damage to the goblins and eventually levels up to level 10, earning him a special ability called God's Blessing. This is a gift granted only to those beloved by the gods, which boosts the user's stats tremendously, but the boost depends on the love from the divine. Kaito immediately figures this must be an overpowered skill somehow connected to Sophie. So, to activate it, Kaito tries to riz Sophie up by promising to sniff her armpit and choke her with his load, and for a brief moment, the little naughty gremlin is ready to open her floodgates, but they are suddenly interrupted when a rare glowing skeleton shows up, ready to attack. Kaito assumes the presence of such a rare monster must be an indirect effect of Sophie's blessing, but as the skeleton charges, Sophie creates a divine barrier to protect them. From inside the barrier, Kaito tries to strike the skeleton, but when his tungsten rod lands, it has no effect, shocking him. Panicking, Kaito orders Sophie to attack with her lightning magic, and she obeys, obliterating the skeletal monster with high-voltage electricity. As the monster vanishes, it leaves behind a rare bright red core, which Kaito picks up, assuming it must be a valuable magic core. But when the dwarf starts complaining of hunger after using her powers, Kaito has no choice but to feed it to her. However, later that day, when he learns from the receptionist that a red magic core would sell for as high as $2 million, Kaito almost loses his mind, realizing the little glutton just ate his retirement pension. Throughout that night, he could not sleep, just thinking about how he would have been a millionaire. So the next day in the dungeon, he tells Sophie that from now on, he would like to fight by himself. Sophie panics, thinking her master no longer needs her, but Kaito assures her that is not the case. He explains that he is considering going to the third floor, and that if he continues to depend on her to fight all his battles, he would become even more worthless than he already is. Suddenly, Sophie senses a monster close by, and in the next second, a goblin spawns in front of them. Seeing this as the perfect opportunity to stamp his independence, Kaito attacks the goblin with everything he has, but gets beaten like a useless thief. With no other choice, he uses all the money he has saved up to buy expensive healing potions from the receptionist. Now broke, Kaito starts thinking of a way to stack up some cash to purchase more healing potions, gear, and also to stock up on magic cores for Sophie to munch on. To do all this, Kaito returns to Square One and enters the first floor the following day to farm as many slimes as possible. After gathering enough mana cores to buy equipment and keep Sophie stocked for a long while, Kaito decides to attempt the third floor. But Sophie stops him dead in his tracks, revealing that she can sense a strange aura nearby. When they get to the source, Kaito is shocked to see another rare silver slime and immediately jumps into action. He attacks the silver slime with his bug spray, but when he is too useless to defeat it, Sophie steps in and eliminates it with her powerful lightning. As the dust settles, Kaito finds another servant card dropped by the silver slime, but when he looks at Sophie, he sees she is visibly upset. When he analyzes the card, he discovers it can summon a demon called Luceria and wonders whether it is safe to do so. But realizing this really might be his chance to bag an actual demon mommy, Kaito decides to summon Luceria, and in the next instant, he is overwhelmed by a massive red light. From the light, a huge demonic baddie appears in her ephemeral form, and as she passes through Kaito, she vanishes. Similar to when he summons Sophie, Kaito also looks down only to find a demonic loli built like a twig with a cold, naughty stare. The small demonic witch introduces herself as Luceria, but at that moment, Kaito, realizing his dream of bagging a thick demon mommy had crumbled, falls to the ground in despair. When Luceria asks if he is her master, Kaito confirms that he is and introduces himself, but Luceria immediately starts trash-talking him, saying he looks like a soy boy who still pees himself. Sophie, hiding behind Kaito because she is scared of the little witch, immediately scolds Luceria for disrespecting their master. But Luceria explains that all demons have sharp tongues, so she should not take any of it personally. Sophie feels better after hearing this and, now more comfortable, introduces herself. But suddenly, Sophie's spider sense tingles, alerting them to a monster nearby. When they get to the location, they spot a lonely slime, so Luceria immediately decides to show what she is capable of. She summons a trident from hell and unleashes hellfire that completely roasts the slime to a crisp. Her overwhelming power leaves Kaito and Sophie speechless, but after this terrifying display, Luceria immediately demands that Kaito give her the mana core to eat. She chews mindlessly and then demands more, but Kaito refuses to give her any until she works for it. Reluctantly, Luceria obeys, and the next monster they find, she takes down with her corrosive breath, which disintegrates the goblin into rotten liquid. Luceria then asks to be fed more cores, and after Kaito feeds her, she gets excited and runs to the third floor to defeat more monsters. But Kaito stops her, warning her of the dangers on the third floor, and then explains that the monsters there come in groups and suggests they go the next day. The next day in the dungeon, it is the same routine with Luceria roasting the monsters and immediately demanding the cores to eat. Anytime Kaito feeds her like a simp, Sophie gets jealous, but she chooses not to express herself. Kaito finally notices the gloom on Sophie's face anytime he feeds Luceria a core, and when he asks if anything is wrong, Sophie shyly changes the topic, claiming she can sense more hellhounds close by. Kaito can tell something is wrong, but he cannot put his finger on it, since he is a clueless virgin who doesn't understand the feelings of a girl. So the following morning, while heading to school, Kaito meets Haruka, and they stroll to school together. On the way, Haruka notices that something is bothering Kaito, and when she asks what the matter is, Kaito decides to ask for her opinion on the issue he is having with Sophie, but he doesn't reveal the truth. Instead, he uses some random friend who has two imaginary side chicks with different personalities, and asks how the friend can get along with the girls. Haruka then advises him to just talk it out with the girls. So, acting on Haruka's advice, Kaito enters the dungeon later that day and summons only Sophie so they can have a private discussion about what is bothering her. Sophie looks flustered and is reluctant at first to talk about such a sensitive matter, but when Kaito promises to let her bounce his rod any way she likes, the freaky midget finally agrees. With a heavy chest, she admits that she is indeed jealous any time she sees Kaito simping over Luceria, and she would also like to gobble his marbles the way Luceria does. Kaito tries to deny it, but Sophie angrily calls him a cheat and confesses that she would like to be pampered too. Seeing her reaction, Kaito finally understands that Sophie is just jealous, so he agrees to pamper her more, which excites her. So after defeating any monster that day, Kaito gives both Luceria and Sophie the same number of cores to munch. He also showers both of them with praise, which, for the time being, resolves the bad blood that has been straining the team's synergy. Sophie also gets to fight more monsters now, and after defeating wild boars, she levels up to level 2, and her stats increase. With her enhanced power, Sophie can electrocute not just one but groups of hellhounds, and her divine shield can now last longer than before. But with great power comes great hunger, and instead of the usual ration of 1 core, Sophie's appetite increases, and she now craves more cores. With the divine goddesses eating most of the cores, Kaito is left with 2 pathetic cores to trade for money. So, to stock up on cores, Kaito returns to the dungeon a while later to farm slimes on the first floor, and after eliminating most of them, he stumbles upon a special kind of slime. Excited at the thought of summoning another midget mommy from P-Hub, Kaito immediately rallies his Roblox wives to help him defeat the rare slime. The girls agree, and working together for the first time, they combine their lightning and hellfire to unleash a massive explosion that eliminates the slime in one go. When the smoke clears, Kaito rushes to pick up the servant card, but is shocked to find that instead of a servant card, it is a magic orb. This magic orb grants the user magical powers, so Kaito decides to use it instead of selling it. As he smashes it to the ground, a blue aura overwhelms him, and when he checks his stats, he realizes he has been blessed with water magic. Desperate to try out his new powers, Kaito enters the 3rd floor with Sophie and Luceria, and when they encounter a hellhound, Sophie erects a divine barrier, giving Kaito the opportunity to test out his waterbender skills on the monster. Kaito fires a water ball at the hellhound, but his wimpy water ball attack only manages to wash the sweat off the beast's face and anger it even more. The beast then launches an aerial attack against Kaito, but Luceria steps in to roast the monster with her consuming fire. With the battle over, Kaito starts feeling like a worthless protagonist, but his little waifus encourage him not to give up on his waterbending skills. Later that night, Kaito, still feeling like a failure, is at the park, lost in thought, when Haruka suddenly shows up and asks what he is doing alone. Kaito accidentally blurts out that he is worried about his magic, but immediately covers it with a lie, saying he is thinking about a movie about a magical princess. As he walks Haruka home, Kaito thanks her for the advice, but then the dummy mistakenly tells her that he was able to solve the problem with the side chicks. Haruka is shocked to hear this, and reminds him that he said the advice was for a friend. But Kaito, realizing he has messed up, lies again to cover it up, saying it was indeed for a friend. Haruka nods, and after she bids him goodnight, Kaito gets the feeling that she might be jealous, just like Sophie was, but then he brushes it off and heads home. Over the weekend, Kaito trains his waterbending skills, But after several pathetic efforts, he realizes that using water magic drains not only his mana but also his strength. But after remembering Haruka's dad and how great an adventurer he was, Kaido decides not to give up. So every day he goes to the dungeon to train, and soon his magic starts improving, even though it exhausts him. After training for hours that day, Kaido, totally out of gas, drags himself out of the dungeon. But just as he opens the exit door, he trips, almost falls, but gets cushioned by the massive racks of a girl. Kaido immediately apologizes for bumping into her, but the girl, named Eri, noticing how Kaido looks like a sucked-up mango, tells him it is fine. The next day in class, Kaido falls asleep after so much training in the dungeon, which angers the teacher, and she scolds him for being the only failure in class. During lunch break, Haruka accidentally walks into a conversation where Kaido is proudly gisting with his guys about his training in the dungeon. When she asks if he has been training in the dungeon, Kaido immediately denies it and claims he is talking about his dance training. Somehow, the chicken brain girl believes him and advises him not to strain himself too much. Not long after, Kaido returns to the dungeon with his travel-sized mommies, and using his now perfected water magic, he takes out a goblin on the 3rd floor. He is excited about the improvement, but then he realizes that for a while now, he has not been leveling up on the 3rd floor because he has not been getting enough experience, so he suggests they venture into the 4th floor. After successfully clearing the 4th floor, Sophie immediately senses something far more sinister near the entrance of the 5th floor. Suddenly, they spot a giant insect monster, and while Kaido is absent-mindedly staring at steamy photos on his phone, the girls sweep into action to neutralize the monster before it causes any harm. To reward the girls for their quick thinking, Kaido offers them the black cores gathered from defeating the monsters on the 4th floor. At first, Luceria refuses to eat it, complaining that the core tastes like sewer juice, but since she is a glutton, she grudgingly accepts. As they venture deeper into the 5th floor, Sophie suddenly detects a powerful presence within the walls of the dungeon. To confirm what this presence could be, she blasts open the wall with lightning, and when the dust settles, it reveals a secret passageway. As they cautiously head inside, unaware that the whole place has been booby-trapped, Kaido almost joins Tupac in the afterlife after getting attacked by the traps, but luckily, his vibranium suit saves him. Soon after, they arrive at a giant door, which Kaido tries to push open with all his strength, but since he is as weak as a sissy, Sophie blasts it open. As they walk inside, Sophie reports that she senses an even more powerful presence lurking deep within. Suddenly, they spot a hulking ogre and a giant slime ahead, and Kaido immediately suggests they defeat the ogre first. The girls agree, so combining their powers, they unleash a massive explosion on the ogre. But when the dust clears, they shockingly see the ogre still standing, unscathed. As the ogre angrily attacks, Sophie erects her divine barrier to deflect his strike, but from inside the barrier, Kaido fires his arrow, which pierces the ogre's thigh. This makes him realize that magic doesn't work on the big guy, but physical attacks do. So he aims at the ogre and starts raining arrows on him. And while he does this, Luceria faces off against the giant slime, but her magic attacks are too weak to put it down. As the ogre smashes the shield with its mighty club, Kaido eventually runs out of arrows, and as he urgently thinks of what to do, he remembers the bracelet built into his suit that enhances magic spells. He decides to trust in the bracelet, and as he summons his water ball, it condenses into ice. When Kaido attacks the ogre with the ice ball, it deals lethal damage, draining the ogre's health bar. Fearing he might run out of mana at any moment, Kaido starts thinking of a way to make his attack stronger. So, utilizing the experience from his training, Kaido manages to alter the shape of the ice ball into an ice sword, and as he fires it at the ogre, every hit deals a brutal blow, and eventually, the ogre is annihilated. Excited and now more confident in his ability, Kaido decides to help Luceria with the giant slime. He first uses his shield to stop the slime from advancing toward the girls, then pulls out his bug spray, since a slime is just a slime, no matter how big it is. Sophie envelops him in her divine shield, and with this protection, Kaido confidently pulls out every bug spray in his backpack. As he sprays the poisonous mist, the slime's health bar decreases until it hits 0, and the slime vanishes. Excited with the victory, Sophie and Luceria happily cuddle Kaido, causing all his blood to rush into his trouser snake. Suddenly, Luceria starts to emit a golden light, and when Kaido checks her stats, he realizes she has leveled up, which makes her happy. Kaido also checks his stats and discovers that his level has increased to level 15, which makes him proud. Sophie then suggests they retrieve the cores of the monsters they defeated. So Kaido picks up the red core left behind by the ogre, and for the slime, instead of a core, he finds a little steak knife that leaves him puzzled. After leaving the dungeon, Kaido meets the receptionist to trade the red core, and while at it, she asks if he would be willing to participate in an upcoming event where explorers form parties to investigate the 7th floor, and Kaido excitedly agrees. The following day at school, Kaido boasts to his 2 underachiever friends about how he has been invited to a party with other elite adventurers. But as usual, while they gist, Haruka interrupts after overhearing Kaido talking about a party, and when she asks about it, Kaido immediately twists his words, saying they are talking about a dance party. Haruka instantly believes his lie, and as she walks away, she hints that she would like it if Kaido invited her to the party. The day of the Explorers event finally arrives, and Kaido, ready to mingle with other adventurers, shows up in his suit. But suddenly, a voice calls out behind him, and when he turns, he sees the Powerpuff Girls, Eri, Miku, and Akarin, who invite him to join their party. Kaido agrees, and together they use the teleportation circle at the transfer gate to head straight to the entrance of the 7th floor. As they make their way inside, they spot a guild worker who informs them that the event is scheduled to last only 3 hours. At the stairs leading deeper into the 7th floor, they notice a mobile convenience store where adventurers can purchase supplies. Kaido immediately starts stacking up on his usual bug spray, but when he realizes the girls aren't buying anything, he asks if they are not underprepared. In response, Eri shows him a magic bag containing everything they need, which all 3 of them carry. Kaido is shocked because the price of a single magic bag costs more than his entire family's savings. This makes him realize the 3 chicks must be loaded, unlike a brokey like him, who cannot even afford a decent haircut. Now armed with all the necessary equipment, the team prepares to face the monsters on the 7th floor and makes their way deeper inside. After walking for a while, they are suddenly attacked by a monstrous stone golem. Eri immediately takes charge as the team's leader and starts giving out orders. But before anyone can act, Eri proves she is no small fry by taking on the golem solo and defeating it. Kaido is amazed by how strong Eri is, but before they can relax, a bronze golem suddenly approaches, ready to attack. On Eri's command, Hikarin, the team's mage, casts a powerful spell called Earth Wave, creating quicksand around the monster and trapping it in place. Miku follows up by pulling out her servant card and summoning a divine cat beast, which unleashes a powerful supersonic wave at the golem. Eri then orders Hikarin to blast the golem with a massive fireball, and once that lands, she finishes the attack by slicing the monster in 2 with her spear, eliminating it instantly. Meanwhile, Kaido, who has been completely useless, watches the girls fight in awe, but just then, another type of golem, an iron golem, pops out of nowhere. Desperate not to be outshined, Kaido immediately attacks by shooting an arrow at the monster, but the golem's tough armor deflects it effortlessly. Eri then tries to take down the giant with an aerial attack, but even her spear cannot penetrate the golem's armor. Hikarin follows up with a massive fireball, and when that proves ineffective, Miku summons her divine cat again, attacking with supersonic sound. Still, the golem is simply too overpowered for the Powerpuff Girls to handle. As panic sets in, Kaido suddenly remembers Sophie and Luceria. But when he reaches for their summon cards, the steak knife he retrieved days ago slips from his bag and falls to the ground. Staring at the knife, Kaido instantly remembers researching it a few days earlier and discovering it was a powerful blade capable of inflicting any level of damage he could imagine on an enemy. With this in mind, Kaido immediately asks Hikarin to trap the golem in her quicksand, and once she does, he asks Eri to cover for him while he sneaks behind the monster. As Eri distracts the monster from the front, Kaido charges in from behind and stabs it with the magic blade. He imagines the iron golem shattering, and in accordance with his imagination, the golem swells up before exploding into pieces. The girls are impressed, so after the dungeon exploration event ends, they all have lunch together and shower Kaido with compliments, praising his little dagger and wishing they could twerk on it. Before they part ways, Eri asks Kaido if he would like to party up with them again sometime. She explains that their next goal is to reach the 11th floor, and that they would like him on the team. When Kaido reminds her that he is one of the brokies Andrew Tate loves to talk about, the girls insist they don't care about his broke status, as long as his anaconda stays active. Even though Kaido would love nothing more than to join this party of plotful baddies, he remembers the 2 plotless goddesses he already explores the dungeon with and asks for some time to think about the proposal. The girls assume Kaido is reluctant to bless their party with his thick girth, but when Kaido frantically reassures them that isn't the case, Eri agrees and tells him to let them know his decision once he is done thinking. The next day in the dungeon, Sophie and Luceria are pissed when they learn their master might be ditching them for another party. Kaido tries to explain that it is not like he is trying to dump them, but the girls don't want to hear it. The following day, while walking home from school, Haruka asks Kaido about the dance party he mentioned earlier, and Kaido nervously stammers that it went fine. She then asks if he is free that weekend, but before he can answer, Haruka invites him to go shopping with her. Kaido is shocked, immediately assuming she is asking him out on a date, but he agrees anyway, which makes Haruka smile with excitement. When the weekend arrives, Kaido meets up with Haruka at her house like the perfect boyfriend, and together they head to the mall. But suddenly, Kaido gets distracted by an advertisement on television promoting the dungeon and selling mana cores. Haruka notices how engrossed Kaido is in the advert, so she calls his name to get his attention and tells him to forget everything about the dungeon for the day and focus on her. Kaido shyly agrees, and they spend time reminiscing about their childhood memories. Afterwards, they share a drink together, and by the end of the day, they arrive at the train station to head home. While waiting for the train, Kaido once again gets distracted by the dungeon advert, and Haruka notices just how deeply he loves the dungeon. Just then, she sees a mother cradling a baby, which stirs something inside her. So she turns to Kaido and tells him there's one more place she wants to visit. Kaido agrees, and Haruka takes him to the front of the guild building, where the dungeon is located. There, with a heavy heart, she talks about her father, who abandoned her when she was little to hustle in the dungeon, but never returned. She then tries to brush aside the painful memories and suggests they head home. But while watching her walk ahead, Kaido understands that she misses her father, and that's exactly why she never wants him to go into the dungeon, because she's afraid of losing him too. Days later in the dungeon, Kaido decides to try out a new offensive attack, so he combines his magic dagger with his water ball spell, creating the perfect ice blade that can eliminate a golem in one decisive slice. Sophie then brings up their earlier discussion about Kaido wanting to ditch them to join a new party. She worries that the reason he wants to leave is because they aren't working hard enough, and she desperately promises they'll try even harder. Kaido tries to explain that it isn't the reason, but Luceria shuts him up, insisting it's because he doesn't want to feed them mana cores anymore. Annoyed, she whips out her devil trident and swears to make sushi out of him, but Sophie suddenly changes her mind and says she'll support his harem. Hearing this, Luceria sighs in frustration but reluctantly agrees to support him too. However, she warns Kaido not to forget their magic cores, and he agrees. Curious, Sophie asks why Kaido decided to join another party instead of sticking with them, and Kaido explains that he simply wants to improve his fighting skills, since whenever he's with them, he ends up leaving the battles for them to handle. Later that night, Kaido tries to call Eri to tell her he'll be joining her party, but he gets nervous, and his hands start shaking like a rusty blender. Suddenly, Haruka's call comes through, and as Kaido frantically picks up, she apologizes for calling so late, and says she has something important to tell him. But before Haruka can continue, Kaido interrupts, asking if she knows any tricks to cure anxiety. He lies, claiming he's asking on behalf of his buddies, Shinji and Hayato, who supposedly have severe anxiety and are too nervous to make out with girls. Trying to help, Haruka shares a story from years ago when she was a little girl, too nervous to play the piano in front of a crowded audience. To calm her down, her dad would gently tickle her cheek, and it would somehow ease her nerves. Kaido immediately tries the trick on himself, then hurriedly bids Haruka goodnight without hearing what she actually wanted to say. Meanwhile, at a Shaolin temple, Eri is busy perfecting her stance and spear technique when suddenly her phone rings. She picks up the call, and it's from Kaido informing her that he's interested in joining her party, but only on weekends. Eri replies that she is fine with the arrangement and tells him to meet them at the dungeon that coming weekend. The weekend arrives, and Eri and her team, together with Kaido, are already in the dungeon facing off against a group of stone golems. Kaido charges in first, attacking the golems with his ice blade, while Hikarin uses her magic to trap the monsters in quicksand. Miku isn't left out, as she summons Snatch, her divine cat, which unleashes a supersonic blast on the monsters. Working together, they manage to take down several of the stone golems, while Eri finishes off the last one with an aerial slash that splits it in two. With the golems defeated, Eri and the girls praise Kaido, impressed by how powerful his ice blade attacks are. The following day, upon arriving on the 8th floor, Snatch, Miku's cat, leads the way, and Kaido realizes that, just like Sophie, the cat can also detect the presence of monsters. Suddenly, Snatch stops and alerts everyone, but before they can react, a monstrous fish bursts out of a pool and immediately attacks Kaido with a corrosive liquid that shreds his life jacket to pieces, causing him to scream in pain over the loss. But just then, Miku quickly takes down the monster by firing an arrow straight through its head with the bowgun Kaido lent her. A few minutes later, Snatch alerts them again, and suddenly, numerous sharp-toothed tunas come flying in from every direction. Eri swings her spear mercilessly, cutting down several of the monster fish, while Miku uses the bowgun with precision to take out others. Hikarin blasts a few with fireballs, and Kaido finishes off the rest with his mana gun. When Kaido suddenly runs out of mana bullets, he switches to his ice blade to get the job done, but doing so drains his mana points rapidly, causing him to collapse from exhaustion. A few moments later, Kaido wakes up to find his fat skull resting peacefully on Eri's milkshake. He panics like a virgin and immediately jumps up to apologize for being a beta male, only to realize that his mana points have fully recovered. Eri explains that they used a magic potion on him, and when Kaido asks why they would waste something so valuable on a small woolly loser like him, she tells him it's because they now see him as a member of their party. Suddenly, Snatch begins screeching in fear, trying to alert them to the presence of something far more sinister. To their horror, a monstrous sea dinosaur emerges from the water, causing Kaito to immediately suggest they make a run for it. Everyone agrees, but as they sprint toward the exit, the beast stomps its feet violently, and the impact causes rocks to collapse and block the path, making escape impossible. With no other choice, Kaito takes charge and suggests they fight with everything they have. The girls nod with determination, and Hikarin starts by attempting to trap the dinosaur in quicksand, but she fails miserably. Miku then unleashes Snatch, but her supersonic vibrations prove useless against the colossal monster. Kaido then follows up by stabbing the dinosaur with his ice blade, only to realize it has no effect. At the same time, Eri launches an aerial attack and manages to stab the beast in the head, but this only enrages it, causing the dinosaur to thrash violently, sending Eri crashing into the water and knocking her unconscious. With the team completely overwhelmed by the gigantic monster, Kaido, desperate to save their lives, has no choice but to summon his mini-goddesses, Sophie and Luceria. In a magnificent strobe of colorful light, Sophie and Luceria appear, and seeing their master in danger, the two waste no time combining their powers to attack the dinosaur. With a massive explosion that shakes the very core of the dungeon, they eventually eliminate the sea beast and are relieved that their master is unhurt. Miku and Hikarin immediately start fangirling over Sophie and Luceria, while Eri gets an explanation from Kaito that Sophie and Luceria are his servants. After leaving the dungeon, Eri invites Kaito to her college for their open campus event, and Kaito agrees to attend. The following week in class, Kaito tells Shinji and Hayato about Eri's campus event that he would be attending, and they immediately suggest that he attend it with Haruka. However, when Kaito tries to invite Haruka, he nearly has a mental breakdown, so he mistakenly tickles his cheeks to ease his anxiety in front of Haruka. Summoning all the courage, Kaito finally invites her, and Haruka eagerly accepts while beaming with excitement. Not long after, Kaito arrives at Haruka's place to take her to Eri's college event. They board a train together heading for the college, but Kaito is tense just being alone with her. Luckily, Shinji and Hayato also agree to tag along, and being in the company of his homeboys somehow boosts Kaito's confidence. A few hours later, they arrive at the prestigious college gate and are stunned by how expensive the entire campus looks. As they head to the reception area to meet Eri, Haruka can't stop yapping excitedly about how much she'd love to attend the college after graduation and wishes Kaito would go there with her. This sends Kaito's imagination into overdrive as he pictures the two of them walking across the campus under cherry blossoms, but he snaps himself out of the daydream, reminding himself that he'll have to study hard before he can ever make it into a place like this. When they finally reach the reception area, they meet Eri, who is delighted to see Kaito. Still, she would have preferred if he had come alone, since her real intention was to use the event as an excuse to bond with him. On the other hand, Shinji and Hayato explode their cans just seeing how gorgeous Eri is, but Eri couldn't care less about the two flapless gooners since she's only interested in Kaito. When she asks who Haruka is, Kaito introduces her as his childhood friend, and learning that they aren't dating visibly relieves Eri. In the meantime, Eri urges them to take a tour of the college, promising to join them later, and they all head off excitedly. As they walk through the school building, Shinji and Hayato, still fascinated with Eri, demand to know where Kaito managed to meet a hottie like her. While trying to explain, Kaito accidentally mentions that they met in a dungeon, immediately sparking Haruka's curiosity. Before Haruka can start questioning Kaito about it, Shinji and Hayato sense the tension brewing and quickly snatch Kaito away for a serious talk. Now alone, they warn him to be careful about mentioning anything related to dungeons around Haruka. They remind him how worried Haruka is about him exploring the dungeon, and Kaito promises to be on his best behavior from then. With that, they continue the college tour, checking out the massive auditorium, the digital chalkboards, and the film theater, all of which leave them in awe. While taking a short break in the garden, Kaito, completely overwhelmed by how amazing the college is, admits that he would love nothing more than to attend someday. But Hayato quickly reminds the Broki that it's just a pipe dream, and that his loan shark parents could never afford the tuition. Soon after, Hikarin and Miku join them, and during introductions, they accidentally let the cat out of the bag by revealing that they and Kaito are party members who hit the dungeon every now and then. Upon hearing this, Haruka immediately starts overthinking all the lies Kaito has been feeding her for months. But just as Kaido nervously tries to explain himself, Eri shows up and suggests they all grab lunch at the cafeteria, momentarily saving Kaido's skin. After lunch, Haruka says she wants another drink and politely asks Kaido to accompany her to the drink stand. Once they leave, Shinji and Hayato take advantage of being alone with the girls and start cracking naughty jokes to boost their chances of eating their fat coochies. But just when their luck seems to be turning, Kaito and Haruka return with drinks, ruining all the progress they think they've made. After having their drinks, Eri then decides to continue the tour, taking them to the massive pool and then to the tennis court. While walking down the stairs to get a better view, Hikarin trips and almost falls, but Kaido catches her with insane speed, shocking everyone. Suddenly, some random bozo kicks a soccer ball way too hard, and it nearly slams into Miku's face. But Kaido reacts instantly, pulling off a Shaolin soccer-level move to block it and save her, leaving everyone speechless and the girls clearly impressed. After the eventful day, they all exchange contact information, and for the first time ever, Shinji and Hayato have girls' numbers in their phones, which makes them feel like absolute winners. On the train ride home, Shinji and Hayato start interrogating each other, debating which of the three girls they would kiss, smash, or marry. Hayato says he would smash Eri mercilessly, kiss Miku, and marry Hikarin, while Shinji claims he would rather smash all of them. Later that night, as Kaido walks Haruka home, she asks for his answer to the same question, to which Kaido tells her he hasn't given it much thought but promises to let her know after he does. His response, however, makes Haruka jealous since she was expecting him to say he would kiss, smash, and marry her. So when they arrive at her place, she storms inside without saying goodnight, making her jealousy obvious. While taking a shower that night, Kaido anxiously wonders what might have made Haruka upset. But then he remembers he has a bigger issue to deal with, and that is his two Smurf goddesses, whom he ignored all day and are probably furious with him. The following day in the dungeon, Sophie and Luceria demand an explanation from Kaito for not summoning them the day before. So Kaido explains that he went on a college tour with Eri and begs them not to be offended. To cheer them up, Kaido offers to give them 3 cores each, but they refuse and insist he give them 100 cores instead. While they're still arguing, Kaido suddenly spots a rainbow-colored slime sneaking up on them, and when he alerts the girls, Luceria angrily roasts the slime to a crisp for interrupting their conversation. With jealousy written all over their faces, Sophie and Luceria immediately return to the argument, demanding their cores, and after a brief negotiation, Kaido eventually agrees to give them 10 each. When Kaido later checks the loot from the slime, instead of a core, he finds a glove called the Glove of Reason, which grants the user invisible powers at the cost of draining his mana points. To test out the strange item, Kaido and the girls head to the pond on the 8th floor. There, Kaido discovers that the glove's attack power alone is weak and insignificant, so he decides to combine it with his magical dagger, and the resulting attack effect impresses him. Soon after, Eri and the girls meet up with Kaido in the dungeon, but their presence alone causes Sophie and Luceria to burn with jealousy. They puff out their little cheeks to show just how upset they are, and Kaito, desperate to calm them down, offers more cores to satisfy their endless appetite. Kaido and his tiny servants, alongside Eri and her team, then decide to explore the 9th floor together, but after a brief walk, Sophie suddenly alerts them to the presence of a powerful monster ahead. Kaido immediately starts to panic, but Eri and the others suggest they push forward and treat fleeing for their lives as a worst-case scenario, to which everyone nods in agreement. When they reach the source of the threat, they're shocked to find a 2-headed beast, which Luceria instantly recognizes as an Orthros. The appearance of such a powerful monster raises serious concern, since it shouldn't be roaming the 9th floor. Kaido quickly suggests they move to Plan B, which is to run, and everyone agrees, but unfortunately, it's already too late as the beast notices them and charges. Sophie immediately summons her divine shield to protect everyone, and from within it, Hikarin traps the creature in quicksand. Luceria follows up with a massive inferno, but the beast chests it effortlessly and retaliates with a terrifying blaze of its own, which is deflected by Sophie's impenetrable barrier. Thinking fast, Kaido then instructs Luceria to target the Orthros' stomach with her fire while he distracts it. But even after executing the move, the 2-headed beast only shrieks in pain, and the attack is not enough to cause any real damage. Realizing they'll need more firepower to take down this terrifying monster, Kaido orders everyone to attack together. On cue, Sophie then summons her divine spear and strikes with a powerful surge of electricity, while Luceria follows up with a massive fireball. Eri and Miku rain bullets on the beast, and Kaido joins in by slicing it with his conjured ice blade. The entire team keeps up the pressure, unleashing every attack they have, and eventually, they manage to bring the creature down. While everyone celebrates their teamwork, Luceria grows uneasy, wondering what could have attracted an Orthros to the 8th floor. Suddenly, Sophie mentions that she can still sense a powerful presence lurking in the shadows. To everyone's shock, a demon with a chopped face emerges from the darkness, demanding a fight. After mocking Kaido and the team as a ragged squad of losers, the demon swears to make them taste dust and knuckles. Without hesitation, he attacks, unleashing a strange dark energy, but Sophie reacts instantly, raising her shield to block it. The team immediately goes on the offensive, striking the demon all at once, but they're left speechless when their combined attacks don't leave a single scratch on him. The demon then counters by lunging his dark sword at Kaito, aiming to give him a quick death. But when Eri intervenes and blocks the attack, he sends her crashing into the dungeon wall. As the demon clashes blades with Kaido, Kaido's weapon somehow gains the upper hand and shatters the demon's sword, shocking him. Enraged by this, the demon delivers a crushing punch that sends Kaido tumbling across the ground, and when the others angrily attempt a revenge attack, they are subdued one after another like stubborn flies. Watching all his teammates lying helpless on the floor, Kaito desperately brainstorms ways to take down the demonic menace, and that's when he remembers a certain ability in Luceria's stats called Beauty of Gluttony. This skill temporarily amplifies Luceria's power, but at the devastating cost of consuming Kaito's health points. With no other way out of the situation, Kaido decides to use it, and even though Luceria protests, fearing he might die, Kaido insists she activate it. Luceria finally agrees, and as she activates Beauty of Gluttony, she devours Kaido's health like a drunkard mercilessly gulping down a bottle of beer. As a result, Luceria regains her full demonic powers and transforms into her true baddie form, surprising Kaido and leaving him completely stunned. The Horn Demon, also shocked by her transformation, immediately attacks her with his dark mystic energy. But Luceria tanks the blow effortlessly and reminds him that a lowly demon like him cannot harm her. Luceria reveals that she is a high-ranking Viscount demon, and with nothing holding her back, she tears the worthless demon apart from the inside, using a violent whirlwind of infernal energy. With the Horn Demon annihilated, Kaido, now on the verge of losing consciousness, quickly begs Luceria to stop draining his energy and return to her minion form. But Luceria teases him, saying she wants to bump Uglies first. However, seeing that the guy is dangerously close to collapsing, she finally agrees and transforms back into her minion form. A while later, everyone finally recovers and realizes that they've all leveled up as a team, which excites them. Kaido then suggests they call it a day, but before leaving, he picks up the giant green core left behind by the monstrous Orthros, and also finds a demon servant card dropped by the Horn Demon. Although Luceria strongly protests against Kaito using the card to summon the low-ranking demon, Kaito decides to summon Belia, the Horn Devil, hoping that this time he might get a servant who isn't Kevin Hart-sized. As he activates the card, a flashy display of magical strobe lights appears and then vanishes instantly. But when Kaito looks around, but doesn't see anyone, then, as usual, he looks down and finds a tiny horn demon swearing loyalty to him. The sight of the miniature monster immediately makes Kaito regret his decision and wish he had just sold the card instead. A few weeks later in the dungeon, Kaito decides to test out Belia's powers and see what the dwarf is capable of, but Belia admits that without a proper weapon, he's completely useless in combat. Kaito remembers that he was the one who broke Belia's sword, so to make up for it, he gives him his tungsten rod to use as a weapon. Belia isn't exactly thrilled about using a blunt rod, but with no other option, he reluctantly accepts it like a true demon knight. Armed with it, he attacks a couple of unfortunate goblins nearby and manages to defeat them. Everyone is impressed by his fighting skills except Luceria, who mocks him, saying he fights worse than a Disney princess. Embarrassed, Belia reminds her that since he's been reduced to a pathetic level 1, his body is still adjusting to the downgrade. Then, in a sudden emotional spiral, he begs Kaito not to abandon him for being useless and promises to work hard to become a knight worthy of the group. Kaito assures him that he won't abandon him, and then asks to see another ability he possesses called Dark Cure, which can not only heal wounds but also restore mana and health points. However, before that, Kaito has to drain his current health points, so he does some push-ups and also hip squats, and after he is completely out of gas, he asks Belia to cast Dark Cure on him to restore his energy. Belia obeys, but when he tries activating Dark Cure, it fails to restore Kaito's health due to his low level, but it does manage to heal the wound on Kaito's arm. Kaito is disappointed because he had always thought he could use Dark Cure to counter the effect of Luceria's Beauty of Gluttony. However, the fact that Belia can heal wounds makes Kaito realize he might actually be useful to the team, since it means they won't have to spend money on healing potions anymore. Suddenly, a bronze golem appears out of nowhere, and Kaito decides this is the perfect opportunity for everyone to test their upgraded abilities after leveling up. Hikarin goes first, and her former quicksand ability has now evolved into an ice-freezing skill that locks the golem in place. Eri follows up and, with a single clean slice of her spear, shatters the frozen golem into 2 pieces. When more golems emerge, Miku tests her new upgraded ability, Dance of Vision, which creates a magical illusion of blooming flowers that causes a major distraction, while Snatch, now upgraded as well, then unleashes millions of spikes from its body, delivering the final blow. As they move deeper into the dungeon, they encounter more goblins, and this time, Kaito decides to test Sophie's upgraded power called the Song of Valkyrie. This ability can only be activated through singing, and when Sophie starts singing like a K-pop demon hunter, a radiant angelic aura envelops the entire team, dramatically boosting their energy. With this power enhancement, Kaito realized that the attacking goblins now appear slower in his eyes, making it easy for him to slice through them. Also, Luceria and Belia, who are now stronger, combine their assault effortlessly and wipe out the rest of the goblins. Still, Belia feels he could contribute even more if he had a proper sword, and even though the rest of the team try to cheer him up, he explains that as knight he can hone his skills better wielding a sword. So to fulfill his wish, Kaito buys him one at sonic speed and Belia is moved to tears, overwhelmed by how much his master believes in him. To demonstrate how effective he is with the sword, Belia attacks a group of ugly goblins and, without breaking a sweat, completely eliminates them, leaving everyone speechless. Kaito then asks if Belia can train him in swordsmanship, admitting that he's basically useless in a sword fight, and Belia, overwhelmed by the request from his master, immediately agrees. Belia suggests they begin training right then, but Kaito refuses, explaining he needs to get home early that day. Sophie and Luceria immediately suspect that Eri and her friends are the reason their simp of a master is leaving the dungeon early, and, as if on cue, Eri interrupts, reminding Kaito that they agreed to study at her place the next day. This makes Sophie and Luceria pout in jealousy, but Kaito hurriedly promises to spend time with them over the weekend. The following afternoon, Kaito, Haruka, Shinji, and Hayato arrive at Eri's place to study and are amazed by how massive the front gate is. Soon after, when Miku and Hikarin arrive in their Nepo Babies ride, the girls receive princess treatment and are driven to the main house in a golf cart, while Kaito and his boys are forced to trek the entire distance as training to strengthen their cores. When the girls finally reach the main house, they meet Eri, who has been expecting them. Eri's family has been running the dojo for years, so everything there is designed for some kind of training. There's even a waterfall meant to calm the mind and a massive yard built to strengthen the body. After giving them a tour of her house, the guys arrive, so Eri takes all of them inside the dojo to commence the study. But sitting so close to each other causes their naughty hormones to spike. So before they turn the study session into an orgy session, Eri immediately proposed they all go cool off at the waterfall. Kaito immediately objects since he is allergic to water, but since everyone else agrees, he has no choice but to go along. When they arrive at the waterfall, the girls step in first, and after they finish cooling off their steamy kitties, the boys go in next, only to nearly freeze from how cold the water is. Later that night, the girls excitedly thank Eri for inviting them to her crib, while Kaito and his guys, watching them by the side, are shocked by how much the girls have bonded. That weekend, the team regroup in the dungeon once again, and as they head deeper into the 9th floor, Sophie alerts them to the presence of some armed monsters nearby. Kaito immediately instructs Sophie to use her powers, Song of Valkyrie, and as Sophie sings, it fires up the strength of the team. Using ice magic, Hikarin is able to freeze the monsters in place, while the rest of the team effortlessly defeats them using their combined enhanced abilities. Kaito is amazed at how easily the team can now handle creatures on the 9th floor, so he suggests pushing forward to the 10th floor. However, just as they step inside, Hikarin suddenly clutches her chest in pain as a sharp surge overwhelms her from overusing her powers, and she collapses, blood spilling from her mouth. A few hours later, Hikarin lies unconscious in the hospital, receiving treatment, while Miku, Kaito, and Eri wait anxiously by her side. When Eri suggests they leave and let Hikarin rest, Miku snaps, insisting she wants to stay, surprising by Kaito and Eri by her sudden outburst. Seeing how agitated Miku is about Hikarin's condition, Kaito tries to reassure her, suggesting that a high-end healing potion should be enough to fix it. But Miku counters angrily, explaining that Hikarin's illness isn't something a healing potion can cure. When Eri asks if Miku knows what's really wrong with Hikarin, Miku goes silent and suddenly Hikarin's parents rush into the room, clearly worried about their daughter. After learning that Kaito and Eri are Hikarin's friends, Hikarin's father politely introduces himself and then starts yapping about how often Hikarin told them how much fun she had hanging out at the park with her friends. But upon hearing this, Maiko gets overwhelmed by memories of Hikarin and then she suddenly bursts out of the room in tears, so Kaito and Eri quickly follow her. When they step outside the hospital, they find Miku sitting quietly on the ground like a heartbroken monk, and after a long silence, she finally decides to share how she and Hikarin first met. Miku was a lonely nerd whose favorite hobby was crushing worthless losers in card games. She was known as the undisputed champion of decks, but one day, Hikarin walked up to her and boldly declared that she wanted to challenge her. Miku was surprised seeing how innocent and dumb Hikarin looked, but when Hikarin pulled out her decks, Miku was stunned to see that it was just like hers. Miku's deck is an expensive one, filled with rare cards that only wealthy collectors can usually afford, and seeing Hikarin with the same kind of deck makes her wonder if she also comes from a rich family. It was a fierce match, and compared to Miku's aggressive style of play, Hikarin adopted a more cautious and defensive style, but in the end, Miku narrowly managed to win. Accepting her defeat, Hikarin confessed that she had always been a fan of Miku. She admitted that she admired her and wanted nothing more than to play cards as expertly as she did. Miku was deeply touched by Hikarin's confession and promised to help her build the perfect deck that would suit her style. So from that moment on, Miku helped Hikarin build a deck and their bond grew stronger until they became like sisters. Miku taught Hikarin everything she knew about card battles, and together they went on to win the national card competition. But something tragic happened on the day of the competition. While lifting the gold trophy, Hikarin suddenly collapsed, and after she is rushed to the hospital, Miku learned from Hikarin's parents that her friend was suffering from a terminal illness. When Kaito asks what kind of illness it is, Miku hesitates to answer, so Eri gently signals to Kaito not to pressure her. Just then, Hikarin's father steps outside and says he's willing to explain. He reveals that Hikarin suffers from a condition that gradually leads to total organ failure. There is no medical cure, and according to the doctors, if she collapses again, she may not live to see another year. Eri is shocked to hear this, especially since Hikarin has always been so cheerful. But Miku, holding back anger and pain, explains that Hikarin has been taking medication to suppress the symptoms. Suddenly, Eri mentions their adventures in the dungeon, which surprises Hikarin's father since he had always believed they simply hung out at the park. Yet instead of reacting with anger, the man unexpectedly remains calm. Kaito, on the other hand, is curious about why Hikarin would risk entering the dungeon despite knowing her condition. Miku then explains that it's because of a miracle elixir she learned about years ago, rumored to cure any illness, and said to be hidden somewhere within the dungeon. When Miku first discovered the legend of this powerful elixir, she decided to search for it alone. But when Hikarin found out about both the elixir and Miku's plan to venture into the dungeon, she insisted on coming along. When Miku tried to stop her, Hikarin stubbornly refused, explaining that she wasn't just searching for it to cure herself, but also to become a source of hope for the millions of people suffering from the same illness. Seeing how determined she was, Miku eventually agreed to let her join. Miku then apologizes for keeping everything a secret from Eri, and in response to her apology, Eri promises that she will help search for the elixir as well. Kaito joins in, saying he's fully on board with finding it, and together, they all agree to explore the 10th floor of the dungeon the next day. The following day, they arrive on the 10th floor, only to discover that it resembles a scorching desert and the heat is enough to grill beef. Suddenly, they're attacked by raging camels, and after defeating them, Kaito, caught off guard, is trapped by a sneaky sandworm bursting up from beneath the sand. Kaito struggles, unable to breathe, but he's saved just in time when Miku distracts the crawling beast with her flower of illusion, and Belia wastes no time finishing the monster off. Still, their time in the dungeon that day proves fruitless as they find no sign of the elixir, and eventually decide to call it a day. While walking home that day, Kaito suddenly gets a call from Haruka, asking about Hikarin's condition. But as he speaks with her, a memory from his childhood unexpectedly surfaces. He remembers being young and stumbling upon Haruka as she cried over her father's decision to enter the dungeon. Her dad had gently explained that someone had to explore the dungeon to uncover its secrets and true nature, and he wanted to be that hero. This memory ignites a fierce determination in Kaito, so he decides that he will find the elixir, no matter the cost. That same day, he returns alone to the 10th floor of the dungeon. But almost immediately, he and his servants are ambushed by a strange sand creature rising from beneath the desert floor. After defeating the monster in the dungeon, Kaito returns home late, exhausted. He overslept that night, and by the next morning, he arrives late to class and gets scolded by the teacher. After school, Shinji and Hayato notice how stressed Kaito looks and ask if he's okay, but Kaito brushes off their concern, claiming it's just fatigue and that he's fine. As they walk, Kaito tells them he's heading back to the dungeon that day to continue searching for the elixir, and for a brief moment, Hayato considers going with him to help search for it, but Shinji reminds him they're weaker than a dead chicken, and would only be a useless burden to Kaito. Instead, they decide to visit Hikarin at the hospital, where they play card games with her just to cheer her up, but Hikarin always ends up trashing them like the losers they are. Just as they're about to leave, Hikarin asks them to thank Haruka for the fruit basket she sent, but then points out that Haruka is the only one among her friends who hasn't visited her at the hospital yet. Shinji and Hayato immediately try to come up with excuses for Haruka's reluctance to visit, but Hikarin suspects that it's because Haruka is related to the famous hero and captain, Katsuragi. When Shinji tries to deny it, Hikarin reveals that she's been reading about Captain Katsuragi and discover that he and Haruka share the same surname. Realizing he can't keep lying, Shinji finally admits that Captain Katsuragi is indeed Haruka's father. According to the dungeon journal, Captain Katsuragi was the first captain of the dungeon exploration squad, but after reporting that he had reached the 41st floor, he went missing, and no one has heard from him since. Hikarin believes this must be the reason Haruka hates the dungeon so much, and she swears that once she gets better, she'll reach the 41st floor herself, find Captain Katsuragi, and make it possible for Haruka to explore the dungeon with them someday. Meanwhile, on the 10th floor of the dungeon, the team faces off against a fiery lion-like monster known as a Sphinx. As Sophie begins to sing, Kaido and the others receive a massive surge of energy, and with this upgraded strength, they launch a fierce assault. But the Sphinx refuses to take any significant damage. Suddenly, the beast charges towards Sophie, recognizing her as the source of the team's enhanced strength, but Miku immediately steps in, distracting it with her flower dance of vision, while Eri delivers a decisive strike. Every member of the team attacks at once, and to complete their powerful combined assault, Kaido slides beneath the monster and drives his blade into its stomach, destroying the monster completely. As the beast vanishes, everyone levels up except the Short People's Club, which pushes Luceria to throw a fit. But right on the spot where the Sphinx disappeared, Sophie alerts everyone to the presence of a giant blue core instead of an elixir. After Kaido picks up the blue core, they return to the receptionist, who compliments them on all the hard work they've been putting in as a team, and then she informs them that the blue core is worth $4 million. When she asks if she should split the earnings among 3 of them, Kaido refuses, insisting that she splits it into 4 to include Ikari, who is also a member of their team, and his Mr. Nice Guy act surprises Irie and Miku. Later that night, desperate to uncover the exact location of the elixir, Kaido watches YouTube videos about the dungeon and rare item discoveries. That's when he learns that the key to finding rare items is to venture deeper into the dungeon. So the next day after school, Kaido immediately rushes to the dungeon, but Shinji and Hayato, accompanied by Haruto, stop him and suggest that he take the day off instead. Shinji complains that Kaido has been pushing himself too hard, and Haruka, supporting the guys, advises Kaido to listen to his friends. But Kaido stubbornly refuses and runs off to the dungeon anyway. Upon arriving, he attempts to enter the 12th floor, but when he trips on the stairs and falls, his micro-servants advise him to take the day off and rest, since he looks pale. Desperate to find the elixir, Kaido ignores their warnings and insists they continue deeper into the 12th floor. When they properly arrive inside, they realize the entire area is covered in ice and is colder than the North Pole. Suddenly, Sophie senses something sinister lurking in the darkness, so Kaido immediately suggests they retreat. However, before they can, the ground begins to shake, and from the shadows, a massive stampede of raging bulls charges toward them. Sophie immediately summons her divine shield to protect them, and as they run toward the exit, Kaido realizes the bulls are closing in, leaving them no choice but to fight. Luceria then launches a powerful fire blast at the bulls, but as they keep charging at full throttle, the rest of the team joins in with a full-on assault, taking down the beasts one by one. As their cores drop to the ground, Sophie and Luceria level up, but suddenly, a raging bull slams into Kaido, and in the next instant, he's swept up in the stampede, slammed around like a rugby player until he blacks out. Desperate to rescue their master from the ferocious bull, Sophie and Luceria combine their powers and unleash a cataclysmic explosion that wipes out the entire horde while Belia tries to use his healing spell, Dark Cure, on Kaido. However, when it has no effect, Sophie takes a sip of a healing potion and then smooches the lips of her unconscious master. She sends the healing liquid directly into his system, but not without a mix of her slimy juice. Feeling jealous and outshined, Luceria also takes a sip of the potion, and for hours, the freaky beings take turns smothering their master's lips until they finally bring the cherry boy back from the land of the dead. Kaido finally regains partial awareness, only to find himself staring at an ugly doctor attempting to continue the lip-to-lip treatment. But just then, Miku and Eri storm into the hospital room, worried about him. When they learn that he was nearly clapped by a stampede, their concern deepens, so they decide to walk him home that night to make sure he's safe. But Kaido suddenly ditches the girls and runs off in embarrassment. When Kaido gets home that night, he burns all the articles about Captain Katsuragi that he had kept for years. Then he goes to see Haruka and begs for her forgiveness for being stubborn and refusing to listen to her. He apologizes for never considering how she felt about his dungeon escapades until now, and when Haruka asks what happened to him, Kaido admits that nearly dying that night genuinely terrified him and made him realize she had been right all along. He says all he ever wanted was to become a hero like her father, who led the first dungeon expedition and was hailed for his efforts. Yet even after everything her father did, people trashed him, and little Kaito witnessed Haruka cry every day over the attacks her father endured. This pained Kaido, and though he felt powerless to stand up to them, he decided then that he would prove them wrong and do what her father had failed to do: uncover the secrets of the dungeon and become a true hero. For 2 years, he stuck around the first floor, farming nothing but slimes like a background character, believing that was the only way to honor Captain Katsuragi's legacy. However, seeing how deeply her father's absence affected Haruka made him realize that he no longer wants to follow that same path. With a heavy heart, Kaido apologizes for making her worry and promises that he will never return to the dungeon again. However, after listening to Kaito spiral emotionally, Haruka shocks him by saying he's wrong. She explains that while she was upset at first about him entering the dungeon, she no longer feels that way because she now understands he's doing it for Hikarin. She tells him that her father once said the true meaning of a hero is someone who endures loneliness, uncertainty, danger, and sacrifices for others, and now she understands what he meant. With an excited gleam in her eyes, Haruka assures Kaido that he isn't a useless nobody but a hero, and even though she is terrified every time he steps into the dungeon, she doesn't want to stop him anymore, because she knows he's choosing to sacrifice himself to help Hikarin. Kaido is relieved to hear this, but he admits that he still has no idea how to obtain the elixir, or which monster might drop it. Haruka then advises him not to push himself too hard, and to focus only on what is within his power to control. Upon hearing this, Kaido's 2 brain cells finally connect, and a brilliant idea suddenly takes over his thoughts. So he thanks Haruka for inspiring him, but before he leaves, Haruka tells him to stay safe in the dungeon. The next day, Kaido gathers the entire team and takes them back to where his journey first began, the first floor. He explains that they'll be farming slimes, convinced it's the fastest way to obtain the elixir. While the others look at him like he's lost his mind, Kaido reminds them that it was on the first floor that he unlocked Sophie, Luceria, and the magic blade he now wields. Sophie supports Kaido, explaining that based on the law of casualty, everything happens for a reason. When Kaido is too slow to grasp what she is trying to say, Sophie further explains that the present exists so they can do what needs to be done. Now convinced, they all decide to trust Kaido, and after joining hands to strengthen their team spirit, they dive headfirst into farming slimes relentlessly. As Kaido takes out the slimes with his bug spray, Eri slashes them down, Miku uses her mana gun to wipe while Sophie, Luceria, and Belia finish off the rest. Not long after, Shinji and Hayato decide to finally stop massaging their sausage to Johnny-san's videos for a while and join the team midway through the slime hunt to help out. So working together, they manage to defeat several slimes, and after they finish, Kaido feeds his goddesses mana cores while Eri is disappointed that none of the slimes dropped any rare items. However, they decide to cheer themselves up by talking about Christmas, and even planning to throw a Christmas party inside the dungeon. Kaido also suggests they celebrate with Hikarin as well, and Miku is touched by this, but as they keep on chatting, Sophie suddenly senses a rare energy, and when they track down the source, they're stunned to discover a rainbow-colored slime. Determined not to let it escape, Kaido instructs the team to proceed cautiously and surround it. Everyone agrees, and as they close in, Sophie and Luceria launch the offense, combining their energies to strike the slime with a massive blast. However, the colorful beast evades the attack and tries to flee, but the team tightens the circle, slowly closing in until they finally defeat the id. Hours later, Eri and Miku suddenly storms the hospital and carefully wheel Hikarin, still lying in her hospital bed, out of the premises and into the dungeon. When they arrive, Kaido hands Hikarin a rare servant card that was dropped from the rainbow slime they defeated. The servant card belongs to a fairy queen named Titania, a healing-type servant who is most likely capable of curing Hikarin's ailment. Kaido wants Hikarin to summon her and become her master, and everyone agrees. Filled with gratitude, Hikarin summons Titania, and in an instant, a burst of radiant pink light floods the entire space, and when the light fades, a tiny pink-haired, pink-eyed fairy appears, introducing herself as Titania. Kaido immediately asks if she can cure her new master, and after examining Hikarin, Titania shakes her head in regret, explaining that she is still at level 1, which means she cannot completely cure her illness. When Luceria angrily asks if Titania can't really do a thing to help Hikarin, Titania sadly explains that she is too weak at her current state. Everyone is disappointed, but Eri, thinking outside the box, suggests that Titania heal Hikarin as much as she currently can, and her brilliant idea restores everyone's hope. Titania agrees, and as she joins hands with Hikarin, she casts a healing spell that causes a radiant glow to fill her from deep within, and in the next second, Hikarin's health is partially restored, enough for her to stand and walk on her own again. Miku is overjoyed to see her friend walking once more, and Hikarin sincerely thanks the entire team for becoming her heroes. Later that night, Kaido shares everything that happened in the dungeon with Haruka. He explains that Titania's healing will only last for a year, so during that time, they must find a way to level her up so she can eventually use a powerful healing spell capable of curing Hikarin permanently. That means Kaido will still need to frequent the dungeon, and Haruka tells him she's okay with it as long as he's careful. That night, Kaido tries to confess his feelings to Haruka, but the anime god hates his ugly face, because just as he's about to speak, Haruka's mom interrupts them, ruining the moment. On New Year's Day, Kaito and Haruka visit a shrine to pray, and after praying, Haruka asks Kaito what he wished for. Kaito tells her he prayed to safely explore the dungeon in the coming year, which pisses Haruka off since she had expected the moron to wish he could get into her panties instead. If you enjoy anime recaps like this, subscribe to the channel and watch this next video.